Hi folks, this is Dr. Cywes. I'm the CarbAddictionDoc, and this is the third and final of the videos in terms of my introspective journey around suicide and around self-care. And it is so important because the foundation of carbohydrate addiction is as a dysfunctional surrogate to help ourselves with our own feelings. And I ended the last video with someone's name, Elon Musk. Now, what the hell does the wealthiest man in the world have to do with this? Well, there's some parallels, and I've thought a lot about the parallels with myself and Elon Musk. Well, how can you even put yourself in the same category? Well, first and foremost, we're a similar age. He's a little bit younger than me, but we're a similar age. We both grew up in apartheid-driven South Africa, in segregationist South Africa. We both grew up there. Yep, Elon Musk is a South African. Mother, I believe, was Canadian. But he grew up in South Africa. And one of the things about growing up in South Africa, there was a complete and utter lack of compassion for other people. The whole system was built around that. Segregation is about taking. I don't want to go down that pathway. I don't want to, wherever you come from, that's not the purpose of this. So don't shut this down right now. But one of the things about our upbringing and the exposure and the way of life that we had in South Africa, it was very autocratic, both as a system, but also within families. Stoicism was the order of the day. Conforming was the order of the day. That's what authoritarianism does, is it gets you to conform irrespective of what your beliefs are. It overrides and indoctrinates your beliefs. And growing up in an authoritarian family means that you conform, that you cannot be quirky. And if you're not good enough, if you are quirky, if you don't have what it takes in sport, in academics, if you're a little bit odd, based upon that ideal human being structure that our society, our schools create, you're an outcast. And one of two things happens to you. You either, because in an authoritarian society, it's all about how they value you, not how you value yourself. It's all about the facade that you create to conform, rather than being that individual. And the outcasts, the quirkies, the people that aren't good at certain things, the people that are a little outside of that structured authoritarian academic sports-oriented life, that ordered society. One of two things happens to you. If you are desperate for external validation, and yet your facade doesn't look like that of everybody else that generates that affirmation from the system. You're awful, you're terrible, you're pathetic, you're useless. You are the piece of shit stuck to the bottom of someone important's shoe. You have no value in our society. You are an outcast. And there were plenty of people that I grew up with, that I went to school with, that were just discarded as useless wastes of life. Think about that, folks. That's what an authoritarian system does, is it discards you if you don't conform. So you try really hard to conform, and then you give up. And because you have no sense of self, no identity, and society does not offer you an identity, you become the flotsam and jetsam. So that's what happens to one group of people. The same person gets tossed out of that construct. But the difference is that person has a stronger ability of self-affirmation. I'll show them. I got this. I'm smart. I believe in myself. And there are a few people out there, and actually the authoritarian system of South Africa produced an incredible number for a third world country, an incredible number of very, very high-powered people that the system spat out. The system could only take you so far. But then there were those quiet, humble people that were camouflaged within the system to a certain extent, but knew themselves to be a bit quirky, a little bit different. Didn't make a lot of noise, didn't get beaten down by the system. But those are the people that invested in themselves. They invested in their minds or their bodies, and they were the performers. But nobody saw them coming because they did stuff outside of the box. They thought outside of the box. They questioned things. They said, why? How can I make this better? How can I change things? And when you're built that way, when you're built as a human being to be successful, to be achieve within a system, you're going to go so far, but not much further. Because you're contributing to the whole, you become part of that. When you, however, are cast out of that and you start doing things for yourself, you start saying, let me take this thing, turn around and apply my own knowledge. Obviously, you've got to be relatively smart, talented, and well-educated. But we all were. We all were. That was the beauty of that society and coming from that privileged group on the backs of others. However, people like Elon were able to teach themselves. They were able to question things. And his entire being is one where he's best alone. He's best by himself. He's best thinking things through, solving problems, reading about them, reconstructing, deconstructing and rebuilding things, and asking those difficult questions and solving those tough problems that other people wouldn't even think about. The big gasoline car manufacturers were so up the arse of big gas, their heads were stuck way up the oil manufacturers that they only paid homage to other sources of fuel. But Elon came from it this way. He said, okay, there's a limit to fossil fuel. Let's embrace something that these guys have the technology. It's right out there. It's right in front of them. But they can't see it because their faces are so full of the black shit of oil. Their heads are so up the arses of big oil that they can't think about electricity, renewable energy. And Elon said, okay, let's solve this. Because he bought into that himself. He's not wired like those same people within the system that are interested in power and wealth. More money, more power, more wealth, bigger yachts, bigger boats, bigger farms, bigger buildings, bigger ownership. And they'll lie about it and cheat about it and misrepresent that to make their wealth. He's not wired that way. He doesn't give a shit about the wealth. He doesn't give a shit about the power. And that's what I know about Elon and I love about him. He's interested in proving himself right. He doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about you at all. Let's go to Mars. Let's build a tunnel from Washington, D.C. to New York that goes underground. Crazy ideas. But Elon is all about himself and self-affirmation. I think that way, and here's how I'm going to make it happen. Whether it was PayPal, whether it's anything else that he's put his hands to. And that's about self-affirmation and self-care. And is he a little quirky? Absolutely. He gets off in his quirks. He's out of the box. And nothing will bring him down because you cannot rob him of wealth or power because he doesn't give a shit about it. He doesn't care. What Elon cares about is ideas and thinking and loving himself because of how smart he is. Not trying to show it to you. There's a humility that comes from Elon when he bashes people. It isn't about him trying to be better than them. He doesn't care because they've never cared about him. They've never cared about him. And once I leaned onto that, I grew up within the system trying to have the system look at me favorably. And that weakened my sense of self tremendously. But I brought that Elon Musk identity to North America from South Africa. And it clashed very heavily with the system I was trying to conform to. And I got beaten down because of my anxiety, because of my desire to be affirmed by the system. But I also realized how broken the system was. Hell, as I'm sitting in here in this chair right now, I am the CarbAddictionDoc. That flies completely and utterly in the face of all the experts out there that tell you calories in, calories out, exercise more, eat more plants, don't eat meat. All of us in this ketogenic space are facing the same conundrum because society tells us one thing that we can clearly see is wrong. We can clearly see it is wrong. And some people are trying to monetize this. The Beyond Burger people, the plant-based meat, or some of the keto people trying to sell you shit. They're trying to monetize this. They're trying to leverage monetization by working outside the system. They're looking at this as a hack, as snake oil. And then there are people like me who clearly see the difference because, and I'm not saying I'm in the same league as him mentally, at least financially, but mentally we think the same. I need my alone space. I need to be able to think things through. I need to have those aha moments. I need to understand that what I'm thinking is not necessarily going to be popular by the system. And I don't give a shit about the money. I don't give a shit about the fame. I don't give a shit about what other people think of me. I get off on what I think about in my office. And most of the time it's right. Quite often it's wrong. And I'm humble about the fact that sometimes we're wrong. Because yes, Elon Musk is a humble man. Sometimes his exuberance is like a little child that spills over and he's so happy with himself. He is so happy within himself. And that's my struggle. I live that part, but I also still have one foot in the system that just beats the snot out of me. Tells me how pathetic I am. And anytime I'm looking for your approval, that gets me down. Anytime I'm self-approving, that gets me up. The only people whose approval I care about, my wife, my child, and my 1 or 2 or 3 very close friends that I trust implicitly. All the rest are just critics. And yes, I make the mistake sometimes of trying to perform for them. But when I put on my Elon Musk hat, that's where we're best. Try it sometime. Try that sometime. It's about going to the golf driving range and whacking balls as best you can. It's not about looking at the person next to you and saying, oh, look at that good shot that they hit, look how pathetic I am. It's about having fun for yourself. It's about thinking and about empowering yourself and self-approval and doing the things that make you fun. Yes, Elon's done amazingly well. He's monetized that. That was part of his personal dream. But he doesn't live for the money. Shit, he lives on other people's couches. He stays in his buddies' homes. He doesn't own property. He rents property because he doesn't care about stuff. How many of you out there aren't hoarders? How many of you have not clung on to all that stuff? One of the most cathartic things you can have is nothing. Is nothing because you don't need it. Not because you can't have it, it's because you don't need it. You don't need that huge big house. You don't need those beautiful big cars. You don't need stuff. And you haven't lived until your stuff has disappeared, until you've taken it out. How many of you cannot throw things away? How many of you psychologically and physically are not living in a hoarded house? And you can't get rid of your stuff. You got storage lockers, you got pods, you've got a couple of houses cluttered with shit. Because you cling on to stuff because you got nothing in here. How many of you don't binge eat? How many of you don't pig out on carbohydrates? How many of you do not use drugs to make you feel good because you can't make yourself feel good because of your head? You don't have to be brilliant. But that's why I love Elon Musk, because I see a piece of myself in him who doesn't care about that. He cares about this, he cares about this. And does he have that duality of personality like myself? Absolutely. We grew up in the same country, we grew up in the same system. We both, as young 20-year-olds, moved to Canada. We both went to school in Canada and had the snot beaten out of ourselves, but we're exposed to a different culture. We both will learn to think outside of the box. The box put us here, and we realized that that box was wrong. For me, it was carbohydrate addiction. For him, it was how you pay for things, PayPal. For him, it was about electric cars. For him, it was about going to space and other things. But we both grew up in the system, learned what the system had to offer, and realized the system was wrong. And we both get off, not on our wealth or power, not on what other people think of us, but about what we think of ourselves. Do we have doubts sometimes? Do we step into that system sometimes? Absolutely. Absolutely. But that's what I love about him. He doesn't care about the wealth. He doesn't care about what you think of him. It's about what he loves to do. And more of us can be that way. More and more of us, because I know that I've got that divided personality, and I'm desperately trying to bring this person this way, where I'm doing things for myself, for me and my nuclear family, for me and the few people around me, not for everybody else. So when I do these videos, it is me more talking about myself and talking to myself and sharing what I've learned and what I'm thinking of. Most of the time I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. But if you can be voyeuristic on this, perhaps that helps. Because in my ability to deal with my addiction, this little scrap of paper over here is what I strive to do. And I'm going to read it to you. Some of it will be familiar, some of it will not be familiar. The first 4 lines are very familiar. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. The system. My have-tos. And learning to accept those unconditionally is part of the struggle with addiction. Courage to change the things I can. Me. That's all. Only thing I can change. But I've got to see it and then I can change it. I can see things in the world that just don't make sense. But I can't change the world, I can change me. And if the world buys into it, maybe that'll help you to think that way and help you to change. If you see, a Tesla is a useful car because gas prices are $4.50 a gallon. My Tesla costs me $10 to charge. Then other people buy into Elon Musk's idea. If you're buying into the carbohydrate addiction idea, not because I'm right or wrong, but because it resonates with you as it does with me, you're buying into that. Courage to change the things I can, which is my relationship with carbohydrates, my relationship with myself, my ability to self-affirm, but the wisdom to know the difference. The wisdom to see anxiety and depression coming at me and saying, hey, I'm not going to let you, external things, get me down. Because I'm not performing for you, I'm performing for myself. Having the wisdom to know what I can do and what I can't do. Think it through. Spend time on the process, putting the effort in, but understanding the wisdom to know the difference. Everybody understands those 4 lines. Here's the next part though. Living one day at a time, one dream at a time. Spending time by yourself each day to reflect. Meditation time is crucial to addiction management. Elon loves, his best times are by himself, as are mine. I love my family, I love my patients, I work hard. But my time by myself is more important, or equally important, to everything else. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time. One moment at a time. Accepting hardships as the path to improvement. Here's a problem, how do I fix it? Not here's a problem, I can't do anything, I'm paralyzed. Accepting hardships as the pathway to improvement, taking this imperfect world as it is, not as I would have it, but thinking about how to improve that each day. What is the pathway to improvement? But I accept that this is the reality. If I didn't, I'd clash with society. I don't. I do what I do, and maybe society comes along for the ride. Certainly, in Elon's case, they have. Taking this imperfect world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that good enough is good enough if the effort is put forth. It's about me being proud of the effort I put in, not about the results I achieve. And when I'm proud of myself, then my facade can be humble. If I'm looking for your affirmation, there's no way my facade can have humility in it. But I can be humble to the world if I'm proud of myself. Then I don't have to say much. And that's the beauty, again, of someone like Elon. Who cares what anybody else says? He doesn't. Trusting that good enough is good enough if the effort is put forth. Be proud of the effort. That I may be reasonably happy in this life, find happiness from within and from the important people around me. That I may be reasonably happy in this life and content with my assets, mind, body, soul, and circumstance. I'm going to read that one more time. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as the pathway to improvement, taking this imperfect world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that good enough is good enough if the effort is put forth, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and content with my assets, mind, body, soul, and circumstance. That's why I live, that's why I do, that's what I come back to when I'm approving and when I'm down and when I see anxiety coming to me. Dig in, folks. That's the process of change. I hope this has helped. Please leave your comments. Please leave your comments. I know this had nothing to do with food and eating and drinking, but it has everything to do with why we're fat and sick. And no, I'm not going to commit suicide. I'll think of it. I'll get anxious. I'll flood. But I know better. And I understand. And those thoughts of not being good enough trigger me to do better. Not for others, but for myself. Because I matter. I matter. I am the CarbAddictionDoc. Thank you.